I expect you to appreciate it specifically, but I'm back with another video, as you can probably tell because this video is published and you're watching it at the moment. But I'm back and we're going to a different planet. Now, with my smooth brain, this is going to be a bit more difficult than just building one little rocket to send up there and come back and have, say, Jeb, I think that's who we brought in the end, come back safely. Instead, I have to build multiple abominations of rockets, send them up, dock them with the space station, refuel them, maybe send another abomination up to dock with it as well, and then send to DUNA. This is a lovely cinematic flyby of the first thing we're sending up, which is some sort of rocket. Anyways, it has a lander on it, and it also has kind of a tug vessel that I thought might be able to get us to DUNA. It wasn't able to, but this is kind of a prototype. I actually didn't film the construction or launch of this vehicle because I thought I wouldn't have any hope of getting it anywhere, which kind of proved to be true, but also not completely true, because part of this was actually part of what made it to DUNA, but I'll explain that in the future. For now, we just have to get this into orbit of Kerbal, and we can dock it with the space station then pretty easily. Now, the second thing that I'm going to send up is basically the exact same as this, except it's designed slightly differently. And what I had thought first is I'm going to go through a few different designs, and then I should be able to just send up one thing and then fly to DUNA and back. But after sending this design up, I was like, sure, I may as well just use these two things that I've sent up, and I should be able to get to DUNA and back. Which, in fairness, did work, but I highly recommend that you do not do the same as I did here, because it was just quite stupid and it was a very janky way to get there. So definitely don't do a mission anything like I do it, because I don't know how to do it, and I don't know why I didn't just watch a video on how to get to DUNA, and then I could have a perfect mission where everything went well and I did everything properly the way you're meant to do it. But sometimes I suppose it's fun to just do it your own way, like I did there. I just flipped upside down. That's very safe for astronauts, you know, as they're almost burning up, exiting the atmosphere that they're going that fast. The boosters that you see as well are solid rocket boosters, so I wasn't even able to just thrust down so that I wouldn't burn up in the atmosphere, which wasn't very conducive with life for any sort of living thing, but our strong Kerbonauts managed to survive, thankfully, and the mission can continue. At the time of recording this as well, I had no idea how I was even going to get to DUNA. I didn't know when I had to burn, where Kerbal had to be relative to DUNA to get a proper transfer window. I had absolutely no clue, so I was just going in blind, and I was like, I'll figure it out as I go along. Which again, it did work, but it probably was not the best approach, and I could have easily watched someone much more experienced doing it, and then I could get a much better idea of what I have to do. I just looked at some random Reddit post that had the transfer windows for different planets on it. Now we have finally our second module of the final spacecraft that's gonna fly to DUNA, docked with the space station that I created in the last episode. We were able to prepare for the next stage of this mission, which is of course bringing some brave Kerbonauts to the surface of DUNA. It was a bit chaotic when I was trying to board this part of the vessel that I wanted to bring from the original spacecraft that I sent up to dock with the space station, as it violently went spinning out of control, and for some unknown reason it wouldn't allow me to select a target on like any of the docking ports or anything on the space station, so I wasn't able to burn retrograde relative to the velocity of the space station, so I went floating away, and it did take a while to get back, but here we are, and I managed to get a fairly close approach to the spinning module that we lost, and eventually once I'd come really close in, it finally let me to set it as target, and I could simply point towards target and use our RCS thrusters to just give a little push, and we're finally docked, and this is the final spacecraft that will bring us to DUNA. Now, I had absolutely no idea still how I was going to get to DUNA, so I had to have a little look at a Reddit post to see what the transfer window looked like, and once I had reached it, I roughly set it up, and I dragged the prop grade marker until it roughly hit DUNA, and after a bit of fiddling, I thankfully managed to get it to work, and I got an encounter with DUNA, and I plotted my capture burn. Here's the burn that's being executed to get our encounter with DUNA. I have not entirely decided yet, but I have a feeling this may be the very last episode in this playthrough of Kerbal Space Program, not because I actually managed to complete the science or tech tree, whatever you want to call it, but because I feel like doing something different. I may come back to this, but that's unconfirmed. Although one thing that is confirmed is that we are very soon going to reach our encounter with DUNA, which will allow us to burn retrograde once we get there, and we will capture ourselves into DUNA's orbit influence. I think that's what I should call it. Is that correct? Correct me if I'm wrong. But we can point towards retrograde and burn our full maneuver. It's quite a long burn, but we have quite a lot of fuel too, so I wasn't worrying too much about like trying to do some sort of maneuver that would save me fuel, because I knew I should definitely be able to get back. The burn's pretty much finished there. I did a little cut so you wouldn't have to sit through the entire thing. But now we can do a couple of science experiments to garner more science, and we can send our scientist Kerbal out to collect them and store them back in the pod. I'm almost certain that the burn that I captured here, yes, you can see it there, put me in such a trajectory that I would actually briefly enter the sphere of influence of DUNA's moon. I can't remember what it's called, but that'll also help me to get even more signs, because I can get signs from high over whatever DUNA's moon is called. So that was great. And after passing by and coming back around to periapsis of DUNA, we can burn retrograde a bit to lower our orbit, and also make use of burns at our normals to give ourselves a bit of a better chance of actually getting back to Kerbin. If you don't understand what I mean, if you can see by the map screen here, I have an extremely angled orbit, So I just want to bring that back a bit to obtain a good incline compared to the other planets in the solar system, because without that we would probably run out of fuel trying to get back to Kerbal, or else we just probably wouldn't even be able to, because we couldn't get a transfer window to Kerbal. And here you can finally see us entering DUNA's atmosphere in our landing module. I chose this one because it has a bit more fuel, and those side boosters can be staged to also kind of save on delta V, because there's less weight that we'll have to carry around through the entire mission. It took a couple of attempts, but here is the time I actually managed to land relatively safely. I think I did slide a bit once I came back down, but this little rock managed to catch me and I stopped sliding. Jebediah can finally get out and step on the sands of DUNA. Do his science experiments, of course. We need that sweet, sweet science. And yes, here he steps down, plants a flag, and is able to say that he's the first Kerbonaut to land on DUNA's surface. No time for dilly-dallying though. He can repack the chutes and he's off again. He's gonna have to look in the map screen here to make sure that the craft he's trying to rendezvous with isn't too far from where he's launching, and he can go up to match his orbit with it. I'm gonna do a little test for retention now, so if you are still here, I suppose, put down in the comments, Jeb is the goal. I'm sure that'll do for the 0 people that are here. But hopefully Jeb is actually able to rendezvous, or else he may not be the GOAT. It's definitely not just me being bad at the game and not knowing how to dock properly and wasting a lot of fuel when I try and do it. Yeah, I'll blame it on Jeb. Thankfully though, this time the docking was successful, and after some sketchy trajectory I'm setting myself on, that actually puts me in a position that I might crash straight into the planet again. I do rendezvous, and I don't crash because I burn again to match my speed with the spacecraft. I didn't crash. I only crashed once. Okay? Give me one time to crash, yeah? Here we can see that I'm fine-tuning my encounter with the other module so that I can easily burn towards it and we can dock. This is the part where I dock now, if you can't tell. Fortunately, my issues that I was having earlier on with not being able to set my target have been fixed. I'm not sure what divine intervention fixed that, but thankfully it was fixed and we could dock easily. And there you can see me staging the outside boosters. They did have a tiny bit of fuel left in them, but I felt I didn't really need it, so I just staged them. I don't know how well you can see this, but we have an encounter node set up now to return to Kerbal, and we can see that we should have enough fuel too as well, which is great honestly, because if we didn't then we'd just have to strand these out here, and I don't know if I would have had the patience to rescue them. It would have been a pain. Well, I could have just sent the same spacecraft out to them again, but that would have been boring. I would have had to do something interesting if I was actually going to save them. Of course, I could have just left them circling DUNA eternally as some sort of space station. We could have called it that and had them out there just testing DUNA's atmosphere and stuff. I'm sure they'd love to live in eternity for that. I don't think Kerbals ever even die either, so they'd just be there forever, running tests upon tests upon tests. Rather depressing life if you ask me. But now we're just finishing off our capture burn while I finish my rant about the poor Kerbals. And I skipped ahead to the point where we're entering the atmosphere of Kerbin, because it was just a bit boring watching me getting my altitude of my periapsis to a point where I'd actually enter the atmosphere. This wasn't the most smooth re-entry, but I didn't die at least, which was a bonus. I very almost did though, as you'll see in a very short moment. I landed here, I slid for a bit. Eventually, after a few seconds, you'll see me stop because the friction overcomes whatever weird gravity goes on in Kerbal Space Program. But of course the problem here was me, because after stopping I decided that I'd go out and do some more science experiments, but of course when I opened the cargo bay doors it caused the spacecraft to go tumbling down the mountain. Thankfully though, none of the vital parts on it were damaged, and I could just load back into the space station with the Kerbal that had left the craft, and I could load back into the vessel to see off this other Kerbal. I don't know the name of it, the poor thing, but it can do the last few science experiments because it doesn't need to reset them. But finally, we're reaching the end now, and one more flag is to be planted before we return to the Kerbal Space Center. Well, that's pretty much it. If you liked it, that's absolutely amazing. If you didn't like it, I really couldn't care less. Anyways, like, subscribe, either way, whether you liked it or not, you don't have a choice. And goodbye.